Ideal for Gifted is celebrating National Parenting Gifted Children's Week. Our mission driven work focuses on three key areas: education, equity, and community. By nurturing the potential of the students in our care through advocacy and programming, Ideal is working daily to shape a virtual community of learning and belonging.
Hello, I'm Dr. Mary Grace Stewart, and I am honored to have as my guest Dr. Sally Reis. Sally is a distinguished professor and teaching fellow in education psychology at University of Connecticut, and she is the Lida Neag Chair of Education Psychology. She was a public school teacher and an administrator for 15 years, and she has authored more than 250 articles and books and book chapters and monographs and technical reports. She's traveled extensively across the country, conducting workshops and providing professional development. And she was my advisor when I was studying gifted education, and that's how we came to know each other. And she's been a blessing to me ever since. You can call Sally anytime and she'll answer. It's wonderful.
Thank you. Nice to be with you.
So yeah, it's just a blessing to have you here. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
So we have a bunch of questions. The ones that I think we're going to start out with: what makes learning meaningful for gifted and twice exceptional students, focusing on their strengths, their interests? Can you say a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what makes learning meaningful for high potential, gifted and talented students is if it's interesting to them. To me, after 40 years of work in this field, I believe even more than I did at the beginning of my career that interests matter. So finding areas in which students have genuine interest or can develop interest, because many young people don't know that they're interested in a topic if they don't know the topic exists. So in my experience, learning is more meaningful when it's of interest, when it can be authentic. That is, that they're learning things that are not just out of encyclopedias. They're learning things by doing authentic activities, by looking at multiple sources, by, whenever possible, doing hands-on work. And I think also in many ways for academically talented students, understanding that learning can be enjoyable, that the process of learning can be enjoyable. So if you like doing something in a way that's more enjoyable to you, like for example, if you are a student that has difficulty writing, we don't always want the assignments to be written. We want the assignments to be projects or products or things young people can do with their hands, or PowerPoints or movies or films. So much of enjoyment of learning predicts future engagement of learning. I see it all the time with very young kids that we work with, and we see it all the time in schools and classrooms that we visit. So learning is more meaningful when it's interesting, when it's engaging, and when we look at children's strengths.
Awesome. I've heard that sometimes a child can come into a grade level and already know a lot of the content for that year. Is that the case?
Yes, probably one of the most widely cited studies that I've ever done is a national study using a control group of curriculum compacting, which is one of the most often used differentiation strategies. So I know you'll be speaking to Carol Tomlinson. There are a number of differentiation strategies that are widely used across the world. Compacting is probably one of the most popular strategies. And in the study that we did a number of years ago on curriculum compacting, and that has been replicated several times, what we found is that academically talented students oftentimes enter school knowing 40 to 50 to 60% of the content that they are about to learn that year. In fact, we named the study, Why Not Let High Ability Gifted Students Start School in January? Because so much of the beginning of the school year is repetition of what they've already learned. So yes, that's part of the challenge. And when students are doing things over and over again that they already know, that begins the cycle of boredom. It also begins the cycle, I believe, of underachievement. I believe lack of challenge is one of the greater contributors to underachievement of high potential, academically talented and gifted students.
So we have a lot of parents in our audience. What do you think makes sense for the parents if this is the case, where their child already knows a lot of the things? What can the parent do?
I think the thing that makes the most sense for parents is to advocate for a teacher in the current year, the next year, every year, who understands the need to compact curriculum and to replace it with more meaningful replacement activities. So, either number one, finding the right teacher in the school, or number two, advocating for the principal to have professional development for all teachers in the school. That makes to me the most sense. Every single child that enters school, it should have an opportunity to have their curriculum compacted, to have a look at their curriculum, to have a pre-assessment process to see what they already know. And by having these opportunities, we're going to identify more students. We're going to make learning more challenging. We're going to make opportunities for flexible grouping more available. And so asking for a teacher that's had training in differentiation, that's had some background in gifted education, and that understands the process of talent development makes the biggest difference. So that's what parents should ask for, a teacher that has training. And also, there are teachers that really enjoy working with bright and creative and talented kids. And there are teachers that are threatened and feel uncomfortable when students in their class may know more than they do in a certain area. Obviously, what we'd love to do is have students assigned to teachers that enjoy this process, enjoy working with these students, and whenever possible, have had some background and some training in the area.
Right, right. So there are also students who have both strengths academically, but they may also have learning disabilities, and those are called twice exceptional. What kinds of things, what kinds of learning experiences would you say are helpful for the twice exceptional child?
Yeah, this is an area in my career I've spent many, many years on. I think I did my first study, published my first study on twice exceptional students in 1999. So a lot of my life has been spent, a lot of my professional life and my personal life, because I have a daughter who's now in her 30s who has dyslexia, but also had a very, very high aptitude. So this is both personal as well as professional for me. The kind of learning that works best with these students is what we identify as strength-based learning. So looking at the students' interests, looking at their strengths, providing them with opportunities to work on areas of interest and strength, but not by working in the deficit areas. So for example, we like to talk about dual differentiation. We differentiate for the academic talents, but we also differentiate for the disabilities. And so, for example, if a student has dyslexia, we would not want to have them focus on a project that involves a tremendous amount of writing or tremendous amount of reading in the traditional sense. There's lots of ways to access information that doesn't depend simply on reading a textbook. And I think in that way, when we can work with students that are twice exceptional and look at strengths and look at interests, for example, we advocate a strength-based goal on every IEP for a twice exceptional student, which might be an extracurricular activity in an area of interest, a leadership opportunity in the school in an area of interest and strength, a project, what we might call a type 3 project in an area of interest and strength. These are the things that make a difference. And simply being recognized as having a talent is for these students very, very important, because so much of school is going to focus on their deficit. We want some time in school to also focus on their strengths and their interest and their academic talents, because they have talents. Oftentimes they're just masked by their disabilities.
So you mentioned the IEP, and a parent can, when in the IEP meeting, can talk about that, yes?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, I like to have parents ask at the beginning of the IEP meeting if they could just go around the room and find out from everybody in the room what they perceive as the child's strengths. That sets a completely different tone. I mean, the deficits are going to be obvious. You know, a student with dyslexia isn't going to be able to read or write on grade level. A student that has autism may have communication deficits. Those things are going to be obvious. But if we can just start by talking about strengths and interests, what I found is it sets a completely different tone for the rest of the IEP meeting. And I think that's a great way to start an IEP meeting, as well as making sure there is at least included in that IEP one or two strength or interest-based goals.
That would be awesome. So you mentioned earlier a little bit about underachievement. That's something that educators use as a term, but what does that mean to parents, underachievement?
Underachievement is that I like to say that there's 2 or 3 different types of underachievement. Unfortunately, they become worse over time. You know, the first is incidental. So it's one class, one grade, one area where the child achieves work that's significantly less of lesser quality than would be expected. So students that are not reading on grade level, students that are getting grades of C's in 1 or 2 areas. It becomes over time, if not addressed, much more pervasive. And youngsters, instead of having to be in one class or one area, it's multiple classes, it's multiple areas. And as students get older, again, if underachievement is not positively addressed, if we're not looking at ways to reverse it, oftentimes it can become pervasive. That is, it happens in every area all the time. And then you look at students that are in middle school or high school that are just completely cast away. I mean, they're just not doing anything near what the kind of work they should be doing. They are turned off to school. They are depressed in many ways. And school for them is painful. So pervasive underachievement in all areas is unfortunately what leads to students not being able to go to college, because their grades are too poor, not being able to participate in advanced classes because, again, poor grades, poor academic history. And this is oftentimes, unfortunately, a precursor to a much different life, much less achieving life, a life of where you're not able to find areas of strength and happiness, where you're not able to meet your potential. And that's a loss to both that individual student and their family, but it's also a loss to society. If you have a young person that could have achieved something that's spectacular in a field in which they are happy and motivated, and they don't, then that's a loss to our society as well.
How might a parent help that not happen?
Right. Well, I mean, I probably studied underachievement as long as I've studied my major area of interest, which is enrichment. And, you know, I've talked to, I would say, hundreds, probably thousands of parents about this. And what I always say is to try immediately when you begin to see it happening to try to reverse it. And that is, you reverse it by finding another teacher, finding the right match with the student, finding an experience that the student will love. In terms of a youngster that's had a very bad year in school, trying to find a summer program, not that focuses on the bad grade, but that focuses on interests, trying to change the peer group. Many times students getting into a peer group with other underachievers or other kids that are not motivated in school is not helpful. Getting that youngster into a peer group, academic peer group of students that are higher achieving, that enjoy school, that are doing things they like, that can make a difference. A positive extracurricular experience can help. doing something out of school the student loves, whether it be theater or music, or getting them involved in something that they enjoy. Many times the enjoyment of extracurricular or interest out of school can translate into a more positive attitude in school. So trying to find some enriching, engaging experiences out of school, summers, after school, just to try to reverse that trend. And also look at the peer group, try to find out what's happening. Finding a peer group of young people, as I said, that enjoy school and are motivated and engaged can help reverse underachievement as well.
Incredible. Thank you. So you've talked about talent development. What kind of, there's so many different ways that can develop talent. What would you say is a really good, solid, well-researched way to work at talent development?
Well, there's been a good bit of longitudinal research. My colleagues and friends at Vanderbilt, Camilla Benbow and David Lubinsky, have done decades worth of research on extremely talented young people. We've done work on our school-wide enrichment model at the University of Connecticut. And I think one thing that's clear, it's not one thing that works. It's a combination of strategies. So what we really want is for challenge to be present. What we really want is for this to be a concerted effort over time. It has to be planned. Talent development isn't accidental. It's got to be planned. So we want to look at what's happening in the regular curriculum with enough academic challenge, with acceleration, and that is content acceleration in particular. If that youngster is strong in math, we want to give them advanced math. If they're strong in reading and writing, we want to give advanced opportunities in those areas. We want to look at interests. We want to look at extracurricular activities. So it's planned talent development over the course of a lifetime. So if you have a child that's interested in theater, interested in drama, interested in the arts, you want to make sure, almost like thinking about having an athletically talented students, that you're consistently increasing the challenge, the engagement, the instruction. You need teachers that can provide higher levels of instruction, but you also need interest-based activities that child enjoys, because if there's not if the young person himself or herself themselves do not have the desire to develop their talents, it's going to be kind of useless for parents to push and push and push. So you want to look at all of those things, and you want to make it fun too. I know it sounds like a lot, but the right camps, the right summer programs, the right kind of teaching opportunities, the right projects in school, you're looking for things that are engaging and enjoyable for students, or they won't stay with them.
Right. That's been my experience as well. So is there research that shows that what you're describing makes a long-term difference?
Yes, I mentioned the research by Benbow and Lubinsky at Vanderbilt. Their research is compelling and very well done. We've had our school-wide enrichment model that was developed by Joe Renzulli, my partner, and I at the University of Connecticut, has had at least a couple of dozen longitudinal research studies. In one study, for example, a 25-year follow-up study of students that attended a SEM school, 3 Dutch economists, interestingly enough, reported that students that participated in the SEM school had higher grades. They followed a more scientific, intensive curriculum, especially the girls, interestingly enough. They had stronger beliefs about their academic abilities. They had positive effects of the SEM program in the universities they attended, higher level universities, more challenging field of study. And because they were economists, they looked at salaries, and they actually found higher salaries, which, to economists is important. To me, it's important that students find areas that they love. So what they found is that these enrichment programs had a very positive effect on long-term education, both in academic excellence and creative productivity. We found that SEM programs develop creativity in much higher levels than students that don't participate. post-secondary career plans, long-term interests, long-term project work, and oftentimes additional kind of, I want to say, seeds to task commitment. So having opportunities for more creative work after you finish college or graduate school, having students go to graduate school, these are the things that we have found as effects, long-term effects of an SEM program.
When you say SEM, our parents probably don't know what that stands for. Can you spell that for us, please?
SEM is the abbreviation for School-Wide Enrichment Model, and that is a program that Joe Renzulli and I developed. It emanated from Joe's work on the enrichment triad model in 1977. We have 3 editions of a book that we published on SEM. It's the most frequently used gifted education model in the world. It's used in the United States. We don't license or charge for SEM, so we really don't know how many SEM programs that there are, but we believe there are thousands of them, and we hear all the time from people that are in SEM programs. We do a summer institute conference at UConn about SEM, and there's really 3 major components of the program. Looking at interests and strengths, so providing a talent portfolio for students, differentiation or compacting, and then the 3 types of enrichment that are involved in the enrichment triad model. Type 1 exposure, type 2 training, which is process and methodological training, and then opportunities for students to do interest-based projects, oftentimes when they investigate a real problem or something that's of key interest to them. And that's a quick, very quick overview of the school-wide enrichment model.
Yes, yes. So a lot of these students, it's been my experience anyway, a lot of these students are a little bit anxious and sensitive to their feelings and the feelings of others. What can a parent do if the child is getting into an independent investigation of some kind? And for example, I had a student who was concerned about homelessness, and it became kind of touchy. What could a parent do to help the child work through a lot of those sensitivities that might come up related to something independent?
Very good question. I think that the response to that would be to understand, for the child at least, that the goal of a good type 3 study would be some kind of improvement in the area. So homelessness exists. We know it exists. It exists in every major city in the world. What can I do in my small world to make a positive difference? So it's better to tackle the challenge, to tackle the problem and understand that it exists, but also as part of the work that you're doing, try to make a small positive difference. So what can I do? Can I be part of a movement to provide meals for the homeless? Can I go meet with the mayor, or can I go to a city council meeting as part of my project? Raise my hand as a 10-year-old and say, what are you doing about homelessness in my city? Can I be part of a solution to raise money to try to examine the problem? I mean, as a 10-year-old, I can't be the solution to it, but I can raise the problem, and I can do things in a smaller way that make a positive difference. I feel like backing away from problems for smart kids is not the answer, but rather understanding what the problem exists and what your role can be right now. I gave a keynote in Germany, and I met a student that was interested, a young boy who I met him when he actually was a college student, was interested in saving the environment. And he started the drive in Germany to plant 1 million trees. And his teacher, I met her, and she said, I never thought he could accomplish it, but I knew he was interested. I wanted to help him. It took him years and years and years. And, now, of course, he's going into an environmental field in college. So it's beginning to address a problem in a way that's local and that helps solve it, while understanding that you alone cannot be responsible for solving this larger problem, but you can contribute to a solution. I think that's what makes a difference.
That's an awesome point. um, if there are, hailing back to the twice exceptional students, they face some challenges. I mean, it's tricky to be a really bright person who's kind of an outlier in their overall society of school or schooling. But to be twice exceptional seems to me that it would have some extra challenges or different challenges. Could you talk to us a little bit about what parents can help parents understand what those challenges are and very what they can do to help support their child?
So
No,
it's a
it's
very
a very
road,
road.
definitively. And I do want to say that the biggest challenge and the first and primary challenge is that oftentimes these students are not identified as either. So the students that we've studied that are twice exceptional are generally late to be identified. Many of them are only identified when they're referred for testing by a very, very skilled school psychologist, because we have the masking issue, and Susan Baum, Terry New, others have written about this. Gifts mask the disabilities, and the disabilities mask the gifts and talents. So in the studies that I've done, late identification is common, and that might be identification in middle school or high school. And by then, the student has already begun to believe that they're not smart, that they can't do things. The other really problematic area is that these young people don't believe they should accept accommodations. So, I used to use, with a lot of students that I work with, I used to use my glasses, terrible, terrible vision. And I would say, do you think I shouldn't use my glasses? And they'd say, that's different. And I would explain, no, it isn't different at all. You have a disability that's hidden because you seem and you are so bright, you appear so verbal. People don't realize you have dyslexia, you have dyscalculia, you have any of the other areas. And even students with ADHD that can't focus, that have a really hard time, that are not yet formally identified, are not formally taking medication. These are, or if they need it, of course, and their parents agree to it, these are areas, unfortunately, that consistently occur. And so what you have is students that are with teachers that think they should try harder, that think they should really have opportunities to have their deficits addressed. But they don't realize the deficits are because of a neurological disability. So I think these are all areas that young people have, unfortunately, that their parents also have to deal with. So parents generally know that they have a bright child, but they also see the deficits, and they don't understand why the student can't remember things. They don't understand why they can't read. So parents, as well as teachers, begin to think of a lot of these young people as lazy, unmotivated, when really what it is they have dyslexia. They have a specific learning disability. They have, and even autism. A lot of young people that are very, very bright learn how to mask their autism until it becomes impossible to mask it. They try to emulate others, but then they make mistakes. So it's a very tough thing. And what parents have to advocate for as early as possible is a screening by a school psychologist who understands twice exceptionality. And the good news is many, many more school psychologists now have begun to understand what this is and look for it in their assessments.
That's great. That's great. Sometimes the students come to us and tell us that the culture in their school made them feel bad. What kind of a culture in a school might a parent be looking for that would be accepting of either a twice exceptional or an academically talented child?
Well, I would love to see some academic trophy cases when we enter schools, as opposed to athletic. I would love to see schools that have competitions that are not just athletic. I was listening to PBS last night, and I'm a huge fan of History Day. Our granddaughter won the state finals in Connecticut History Day and went to the University of Maryland as a finalist. But I think the kind of experiences we want for kids are History Day, Science Fair, Invention Convention, opportunities such as you provide. type threes with teachers that are caring, that students doing work that's meaningful, authentic learning opportunities based on interest. I'd want to ask, if I was a parent, what kind of enrichment do you do in school? And if the principal stares at you blankly, there's going to be a problem. What's enrichment? I'd love to see some opportunities for acceleration where it's not considered a big deal for students in third grade. Let me just give you a reading example. Students that are in second grade that are reading at a sixth grade level in third grade should not still be reading at a sixth grade level. In fourth grade should not still be reading at a sixth grade level. In fifth grade should not. So, there have to be opportunities for continuous progress in content areas in which there are strengths. And those are things that are critical for parents. The culture that engages students with those kinds of opportunities is going to be a very good culture for students to have their talents developed over time.
So are there any words of wisdom in general that you would like to offer to parents of gifted and twice exceptional children?
Yeah, I think enjoy the journey. We have a daughter that was twice exceptional. It was tough. I advocated for her consistently. I was very careful about high school. We were very careful about her college choices. If I had listened to some of her teachers, she would never have gone to a competitive college. But over time, she learned compensation strategies. It took a great deal of time and effort on our part as parents to make sure she had the opportunities she needed. And we feel blessed because we had some of the finances to provide her with summer options. But I feel like you've got to enjoy the process. I think, I also think for parents of very, very bright kids, it's fun. We have another daughter who was theatric in the enrichment program in her school. Not twice exceptional, but very, very smart academically. And I went to every play, went to all of her summer programs. We found things that continued to develop her talents. And guess what? She's in an MFA program for television production right now. She went to Northwestern University in theater. So I think you want to look at strengths. You want to support interests at home. And I think also really importantly, you don't want to try to pigeonhole students into areas where you think they should major. When Liza was in Northwestern, several of her friends, not in her major, asked her how she ever convinced her parents to let her major in theater. And I think in so many ways, we're trying to steer kids into majors that we think will be good for them financially in the long run, economically for them in the long run, but not good for their heart and their soul and their passions. So I would just put a plea into parents to listen to students and look at their interests. If we can provide opportunities based on interests, then we can develop a whole generation of talented young people that go into fields. And I think every single field needs creative, energized, talented people who love what they're doing, regardless of what it is. And I think that's where we're going to increase our population of creative producers in American society, which we sorely need.
Absolutely. So while we've been talking, we got some questions from our audience. Ready?
Yes, absolutely.
Let me go through the chat. Okay. You've covered a lot of these, so I'm going to kind of skip through. I hope parents aren't too upset. Let's see. How can I encourage my child to take academic risks? Sometimes the child is so used to things coming easily that when they do encounter an academic challenge, they sort of seize up. What can we do as parents to help them get over that or feel like it's going to be okay?
That's a great question. And the earlier it starts, the worse it is. So you have students that are reading at a very high level in kindergarten, and then they're given something that requires a little bit of effort, they may freeze. So
Right.
I think the issue is to make it a regular occurrence, to do things as a family that involve a little bit of risk taking. And what I mean by that is creative risk taking. So,
Good.
to go to a new museum, try something that's brand new for your family. And the other thing is, of course, to do it with them. So, and make it enjoyable. So I've, studied talented readers for many, many years. It's an area of passion for mine. I was a reading teacher. I love reading myself. And oftentimes when students first start a book that's appropriately challenging, again, this might be a second grader reading at a sixth grade level, and we actually get them a sixth grade book, and everything in school has been easy, 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 easy. And then they get a book that's appropriately challenging. That is, there are some words and ideas they don't know.
Right.
Other times it's just doing it with them. You read a page, I'll read a page. It's having discussions, it's spending time, it's modeling that behavior. So in many ways, if parents model trying new things, even new recipes, new restaurants, new cooking experiences, what you do is you show them the process. So I didn't know how to do this, so let's try to do it together. And I think modeling becomes really, really important, but most importantly, don't give up on it. And you can even explain to kids, you are feeling this because everything you've done in school is relatively easy. Now you're understanding that this requires a little bit of effort. If students don't experience this, though, Mary Grace, then what happens when they get to a competitive college? You get to a certain point, or you get into an honors class in high school where everybody from different elementary schools is now just as bright as you. You need to experience these points along the way. And parents need to not back away from it, but rather embrace it. And kind of try to make it be fun if they can. I remember when our very bright daughter encountered algebra, I think it was in seventh grade, and she looked at the problem and said, I don't know how to solve this, and threw the book at me and said, I can't do it. And I said, you spent exactly 1 minute on it. And she said to me, that's all it ever took before, which is exactly the case. So, over the course of that school year, I sat with her. Well, I didn't help her all the time with her homework, but I sat with her if she needed help. Sometimes I couldn't solve the problems. I hadn't done algebra in a lot of years. So we worked through it together a few times, but I tried to model that anything that's challenging takes time. And yet at the end of it, you feel good because you've mastered something that's engaging and challenging, and it hasn't just come easy. So I think modeling it and having conversations about it is the very best way to do it.
Awesome. So another parent says, my son understands things almost instantly or intuitively, but he also needs to learn how to go through the process. How can we support him to sort of reverse engineer his thinking when he's learning?
That's a great process. That's a great question. And that falls under the guise of what educational psychologists call metacognition, understanding how you learn something. And again, I think part of it is to have a conversation. If you kind of automatically think you understand something, but you've missed a critical step, then you're not going to be able to solve the problem the next time. We encounter this all the time with students doing type 3. They want to jump to the product without actually having done any research, without having any background, without knowing enough to do a project. So I think the answer is modeling and discussing it, having some planning skills built in, having a little bit of forethought built in. What will you do next? How will you do it? And again, working with students occasionally to be able to demonstrate this is how I do something when I don't know the outcome. It's a very common thing, and it's something that over time gets better as long as the student is urged to learn the steps. The other thing is, it doesn't have to be learning steps by slowing down. What frustrates so many very, very bright kids is the pace. So the pace can be more rapid, and it can be more personalized and more individualized, but you still have to understand, I had a problem getting here because I didn't do this. I don't know enough about this. And the other thing is, it can be secular. So you can go back in a cycle and say, okay, I tried to do this, but now I need to go back. And I think, again, discussions, the idea of executive function, planning a strategy, and metacognition, analyzing what went well, what didn't go well, what else you could have done and should have done. These things are intricately tied, and we're beginning to know more about them now than we ever did before. So having parents read up a little bit about executive function might also be very helpful.
And the word metacognition, can you give us a layperson's definition of that?
Sure. Understanding how you learn. What are the steps that you go through? Your own understanding, your own thinking processes, understanding what works best for you in ways you learn. So I think what's always interesting to me is to understand that many very, very bright young people use different study strategies. So there's multiple study strategies to learn hard content. Teaching it to somebody else, analyzing, looking at your notes, and then looking at the textbook and seeing if there's conflicts between the two things. Being in a study group, having a discussion about it. It's not just lots and lots of really, really bright young people don't know how to study. And so they tend to do the same thing. They look over their notes and they skim the chapter when that's not active learning. Active learning is rewriting your notes. Active learning is actually trying to teach that thing that you're learning that's hard to somebody else. Maybe even it's your dog, it's the puppies or the cat that's in the room. But having some active learning as part of your study strategies makes a difference. When we look at the most successful students at places like UConn, they usually have the most study strategies that they use to be able to be successful at something. And some of those are just intrinsically learned over time, and they don't even think about how they do it, but they do it. So I think actually spending time saying, well, how did you study for this? And here's a couple of other things you could do, you would do. Here's a couple of other things you would do to do a challenging project too. Those things can make a very big difference.
Well, you just killed two birds with one stone, because the next question was about how to cultivate study strategies.
Yeah, I mean, there are, 10 or 11 excellent study strategies. Lots of bright kids use one or two, and that won't make them successful when the content gets a little bit harder, particularly in honors, AP, or even college classes.
Right. We have a homeschooler here, and she says, we homeschool and our approach includes project-based learning by theme, as well as grammar, spelling, and math. Other than tests, how can I ensure that they're truly grasping their lesson?
Have them teach a lesson to you, have them teach a lesson to one of their siblings, have them do a different kind of project besides tests, have them do a PowerPoint on the subject, have them do a quick movie on your iPhone about the subject. If you're going to actually try to summarize whatever you're learning in a way that you can do a 2-minute movie on your iPhone, you have to be able to know a little bit. So there's multiple ways. We like to talk about product styles. There's multiple ways, expression styles, Joe Renzulli calls it, multiple ways to be able to show something. And we should be looking at preferred expression styles, particularly if you're homeschooling. Is it verbal? Is it project-based? Is it a paper? Is it electronic? Is it a PowerPoint? And what is it, an art project? Is it a music project? Is it a theater project? Put on a play about the topic. Have it be enjoyable. I think those are all creative ways that you can have a student show they know something without it being a test.
That sounds really good. So expression style knowledge is not something that we talk about very much, but I can see where that would be hugely helpful to know how to show what you know.
In the program that we developed, the online program to accompany school-wide enrichment model called Renzulli Learning, we do an assessment of 3 things. The first is interests. The second is the mode of learning, preferred mode of learning. That it simulation, is it lecture, is it working with a project with a peer? And the third is expression styles. How do you wish to express yourself? And lots of times students by 3rd or 4th grade have a very definitive expression style that they enjoy. Is it by putting on a play? Is it by having a discussion? Is it a PowerPoint? Is it something that's verbal? Is it something that's figural? So I think those things, especially with when there's choice involved, and there's always choice with homeschool, making it fun.
Right.
And again, is it an art project? Is it a music project? That can make a very big difference, not only in showing how much you've learned, but also in doing it in a way that's enjoyable.
Awesome. So enjoyment really is key, as well as what you're learning. I know there may be a lot of things you don't necessarily want to learn, but if you do it in a way that's enjoyable,
More fun.
then
Yeah.
you're likely to
Mhm.
do it.
Yeah, we
So,
talk about the three E's, enrichment being been a part of the theme of our work for 40 years now, the three E's: enjoyment, engagement, and enthusiasm about learning. If we can accomplish the three E's as part of enrichment, then we're able to hook kids, to get them to do things that they really enjoy.
well, a last one is something that I hear a lot. My son is voracious about learning, but he's very disorganized.
Mhm.
Um, how can we help him develop more disciplined approach or more organization? Or is it just that I like things to be organized and he doesn't care?
Well, over time, disorganization of kids leads to them missing classes, leads to them forgetting homework assignments, not finishing homework assignments, not starting things until the last minute. So I think some compromise is always important. I think, again, you model organization. So, before kids go to school, they have to themselves get their backpack out, put their homework in it, put it at the table that is right near the door before they leave. I think, having a weekly plan, even for little kids, what's happening this week, going over it on Sunday, having a monthly plan about long-term homework assignments. These
Mm.
small things, small steps that you do go a long way to helping people be more organized. At the same time, if the style is a little bit more let's say abstract than concrete. I think you have to
Random.
a little bit more random than sequential. I think you have to embrace that. You don't want to change a child into somebody he or she they are not. But you do want to give them the skills to be able to be successful in life. And disorganization does not lead to generally success in anything, school, college, career. So again, must do's, can do's. Must do's in our family was when I mentioned kids had to get their folders ready. I didn't want to be running around in the morning looking for backpacks, looking for homework. So we did that every night before they went to bed. But I didn't
Mm.
push, what they were wearing, and I didn't push. I tried to focus on things that were important, important homework assignments. I had a daughter, my younger daughter, who was very smart, did much of her best thinking, she told me, at the last minute. And so I tried not to nag. And eventually, over time, she learned she couldn't do everything at the last minute. But at the same time, we did help with a lot of organizational skills that I think are important to this day, and help them, all of our kids, be more successful in college and afterwards.
Well, this has been a true joy. I'm so blessed to have you agree to be with us and help our parents. It seems like many people are talking to teachers and they're talking to researchers and academics, but those of us in the trenches here with our kids, we need some understanding as well. And the fact that you are a parent and all those other things that are miraculous has been really, really beneficial for us. And I really appreciate your talking to us very
Thank
much.
you. Thank you. An honor to be with you. And I wish all your listeners best of luck and enjoyment with their kids as well. That's what it's about as well. Thank you, Mary Grace.
Thank you so much, Dr. Reese.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
Bye-bye.